Cool. Thank you, Christina, for letting me be here. I don't remember. Did I have a broken foot or just laryngitis then?
You did have a broken foot.
I did have a broken foot and laryngitis, and when I gave that talk in Berlin, that was fun times. So no broken foot, only mild allergies today. So hopefully I'll get through this okay. I'm Rebecca. I am from this. I did not name this talk. My friend Adam Sontag named this talk because I wanted to name it WTF 3PJS, and he was running the conference that I was going to give this talk at the first time, and he said, how about this title instead, a little more family-friendly title for the talk. But I work at Bazaar Voice. This is a company that you probably have not heard of, but we do like 700 million uniques every month, 20 billion impressions, over 4 billion page views. We're a company that you've never heard of because we do white label ratings and reviews software for major retailers and brands. Here in the EU, I don't know who to tell you about, like Tesco. You've heard of Tesco probably. And we're on their site. In the US, we're on Home Depot, Best Buy, Lowe's, Gap, Old Navy, blah, blah, blah. I can like keep going for the next 20 minutes. We're on a lot of sites and we see a whole lot of traffic. And what I want to talk to you about today is something that I've been thinking about a lot in the time I've been at Bazaar Voice. Kind of my whole job at Bazaar Voice revolves around third-party JavaScript. And third-party JavaScript is what powers applications like Google Analytics or like Discuss or like the super important ability to embed a tweet into your blog post. And my friend Alex Sexton said in a talk that he gave about third-party JavaScript a few years back, he said this, that basically the fact that Google Analytics and Discuss and embedded tweets and Bazaar Voice software can exist is a fundamental security error in how the internet works. The fact that you can put someone else's code into your code is like actually super scary and terrible. But thank goodness we can do it because it makes the internet a pretty cool place and it pays me, so I like that. And for whatever reason, I mean, kind of like Crockford was just talking about in his last talk, we made some mistakes when we decided how this whole internet thing should work, and this whole web thing should work. And third-party JavaScript is one of those mistakes that actually has turned into a pretty cool thing. The ability to have someone else write code that you can then execute on your site. So you get things like Google Analytics, or you get things like Discuss, the ability to have comments on your blog. And you don't have to do any server-side integration. You just like add a single script tag and a little bit of configuration information, and suddenly you have this rich application on your page. What Alex said, though, is that once you put that script tag on your page, there is literally nothing that the person who owns the content at that script can't do. And so, oops, I'm not so good with my Wiimote here. I like to put this another way, that third-party JavaScript is basically consensual cross-site scripting. This Wiimote is just like, I'm just going to click for you. Cool. And so third-party JavaScript is, it is kind of like this contract, not a contract though, at all. It's kind of like this agreement between you, the site owner, and me, the provider of this third-party application, that I'm not going to mess with you. Like, you pay me enough money, and I'm not going to mess with you. Or you give me your data, and I'm not going to mess with you. And it's just kind of this unspoken agreement. But short of doing stuff like what Crockford was talking about, like eliminating the use of this, or doing that sort of enforcement of not even code quality standards, but that sort of enforcement of what you are allowed to do in third-party JavaScript. Short of enforcing those sorts of rules, there's nothing that we, as a third-party application vendor, can't do once you're on your page. We can read what your users are typing into their forms, we can set cookies, we can delete cookies, we can change cookies, we can pretty much see everything that's happening. We don't, but we could. The flip side of that, though, is that our customer, just like we could mess with our customers' pages, and Google Analytics can mess with their customers' pages, and Discuss can mess with their customers' pages. The flip side of that is that our customers' pages can also mess with us. And that's what I want to talk about today. So this is an example of what our application looks like. So you have reviews for some made-up product, and customers get this user interface into their website by, like I said, just putting this simple script tag and then this tiny bit of configuration information, and we, on the fly, client side, generate this ratings and reviews experience. So you can click on the write a review button up in the upper right, and a form will show up, and you can submit a review. All of this, none of this goes through the customer's servers, none of this goes through the customer's systems, and none of this is going through Tesco or Target or anything. All of this entire process is happening through Bazaar Voice, not through our customers. And it all happens, again, because of this tiny script tag, not much more. And what I want to talk about today, I'm going to show you a few different examples of ways that our customers have messed with us. They didn't do it on purpose, of course. They weren't trying to mess with us. But when you're working on one of these applications, like I've been lucky enough to work on for the last couple of years, it really changes. It changes the game, like it changes your JavaScript game, basically. Things that you used to be able to get away with, you can't anymore. It used to be that you could just, all you were dealing with was the fact that you had to support 6 different browsers on 6 different platforms. And that was bad enough. But once you kind of got the hang of that, you were pretty good. And now, in this world that I'm in, we aren't just supporting 6 different browsers on 6 different platforms. We're doing it across thousands of customers who have millions, perhaps billions of pages that I don't have any control over. I do not control the environment in which my code will execute. This is crazy. Like, you already don't have control over what browser it's going to run in, but you can detect, like, am I in old IE? Let me do all sorts of terrible things. Am I in Chrome? Like, let me not do all those terrible things, and everything will be fast and awesome. So we can detect that, but how can you detect? I mean, you can detect, for example, that a customer has redefined the index of method of the native array object. And they've redefined it in a way that it does not return -1 when they don't find the item in the array. And now jQuery breaks. And now, like, the entire internet breaks if you redefine index of that way. And so, sure, you could go detect, like, do you return the right value for index of? But the universe of things that you actually have to check for is impossible. We cannot check for, do you have a clean execution environment, because we would spend so much time checking for, do you have a clean execution environment, that the page would never load, or at least our application would never load, and our customers would be pretty bummed about that. So I want to show you a few examples of these sorts of things that we've had to deal with. So this was a fun one that we had to deal with. This was a case where we got a bug report. And whenever we get a bug report, if our stuff isn't displaying, or if there's something the matter with our display, our customers are pretty antsy about that, because we have sold them this promise of, you put ratings and reviews on your page and you will, like, down the road make more money. Like, that's why they pay us money, is so that they make more money. And if our stuff isn't showing up, then in theory, they're now making less money, so they get grumpy. So this was one where it wasn't that our content wasn't showing up, it was that our content was showing up twice, which is, better, worse, I don't know. Our content was showing up twice. When you clicked on the write a review button, the form would come up to write a review in this nice light box, which is like a ridiculously difficult problem in third-party JavaScript. It came up in this nice light box, but it came up 2 times. There were 2 light boxes, and now everything just explodes, like, once there are 2 of these forms on the page, because events don't get bound to the right thing and everything's terrible. So we went through our code and we're like poring over our code, like where have we double bound to the click event? Where are we like executing twice on the click? What on earth have we done? This doesn't make any sense. Nothing, no code around submission has changed recently. Like this, so it has to be a customer issue. So here's what we were seeing, kind of super simplified, is you click on write a review and 2 submission forms came up. That's a vast oversimplification of a submission form. Yeah, I only got 20 minutes here, so. 2 submission forms were coming up. So any guesses as to what was happening? Hint, the title of this slide is a hint. 2 body elements, like, and to simulate this is really hard. Like, I don't know how they did this. If you put 2 body elements into your HTML, Google's like, or Chrome at least, is like, that's stupid. I'm just gonna make there be 1. And so you actually have to insert the second body element with JavaScript in order to get it to be there. So they were doing that before they were inserting us. In order to make our submission form come up like nice and pretty and centered with a overlay and all these things, we have to insert it into the body itself. And we were, right here using jQuery to say, hey, find me the body. And jQuery's like, okay, I found 2, here you go. We ended up having to actually create a module, a JavaScript module that would return the 1 true body. And now we can't use jQuery to find the body anymore. We have to use this module to find the 1 true body anytime we want to find the body. So that's pretty messed up. This was another fun one. Sorry, I was not properly sized for the presentation. This is another fun one. Here's an example of a function that runs. It takes some configuration. If there's a container ID specified in the configuration, then it uses that container ID as the destination of some widget. If there's not a container ID specified, then it falls back to a default container ID for inserting some widget. At least that was the intent of this. But in reality, when you executed this code without passing in a container ID, it ran, like we got to this console log, but nothing showed up. We should have seen something show up in the default div here, because we said like, hey, if there's a container ID, right? Like if we find something with a container ID, then use it. Otherwise, do something else. Turns out that this customer had used another third-party JavaScript library that they had misconfigured such that that third-party JavaScript library was inserting a script tag on the page, and that script tag had an ID that was, who knows, the string undefined. Because JavaScript's cool, and when you take a string and you concatenate it with something that's undefined, then it gives you back that string plus the word undefined. And since that was a script tag, you can't insert HTML into a script tag, but the code executes because it's like, cool, I did what you said. The code executes, but not so much. That was fun also. So easy to fix, right? Like super easy to fix and say, oh, we just need to check, like, is this defined? And not just use the lazy jQuery search for this, because we might find something that we didn't intend to find. These are the kinds of things that you have to think about, though. Like, if you're writing this for your application, this is a totally legit way to write this code. Maybe it's a little bit sloppy because you're doing a jQuery selection that you don't need to do, but ID selections are fast, so this is basically a really legit way to write your code for an application that runs in an environment that you control. But in third-party JavaScript land, all bets are off about the state of the page. Cool. This is a really handy app that apparently has an update that I am going to get reminded about later. Sorry. It is a really handy app, though. I'm not getting paid to say that. Let's reload that so I don't give away the story. So this was super cool. We're all, if you work on the web, then you're probably pretty good at knowing that user-generated content is scary and could be malicious, and we need to escape it before we insert it onto the page with, say, a templating library. So we need to make sure that if a customer, or if a user submits a review that actually has a script tag in it that steals all your cookies, then we need to make sure that script tag doesn't execute. So we have to escape it, right? So we're really good at this, because we'd be out of business if we weren't. So when we get a review that has a script tag in it, and we insert it into the page, we insert it in this completely safe way, right? Like, it's all escaped, it's good, we're good. And no, like you saw, no alert opened up right then, right? So that's what we did. The customer inserted our snippet. They said, please show me the reviews for product 1. We show the reviews. It comes up with a script tag, but it's escaped. Everything's good. And then they ran some other JavaScript on their page right after us. And suddenly, that script is getting executed. So we get a, like, you guys are horrible people. You aren't escaping JavaScript that's inserted into reviews. Like, who are you and why are you making software? And we're like, I'm thinking, who are we and why are we making software? Like, how did we let this through? I don't understand how we let this through. So this is pretty cool too. All of these are super cool. In this case, this was the code that the customer was running after our code. They were finding items in the body that were not an iframe or a script. They were getting the contents of those elements. Then they were getting, like, the text contents of those elements. So at this point, we're like, okay, it's a text node. We're going to take that text node and we're going to replace it with, which is a jQuery function. We're going to take the value of that node. You know why they were doing this? Because, like, some server-side developer couldn't be bothered to go in and put superscript tags around that little R up there. So they decided to do it with JavaScript. And in the process of doing that with JavaScript, they basically caught all of the text on their page, read in the node value, which is basically unescaped, replaced it, like looked for, is there a registered mark? Like, yes, we'll wrap it in a superscript because server-side people are too lazy, and then put that back on the page. So they were accessing themselves in the process of doing this. This is one where we were like, don't do that. Like, we can't fix this for you. But it was a really interesting example of, like, the things that you get to deal with third-party JavaScript. Let me just flip back over here real quick. If this is interesting to you, this is literally the book about third-party JavaScript development. Like, if you read this book, you can kind of come get a job doing what I do. Because it is like, it's almost about ratings and reviews. It's like, it's pretty much a manual for this thing that we do. It was written by 2 guys who worked at Discuss, Ben Vinegar and Anton Kovalyev, and it's really excellent. And just gets you thinking kind of about, it gets you thinking about a broader world of JavaScript development, and gets you thinking about things that you could do if you thought outside the realm of just developing an app on a site that you own. But also gets you thinking about the challenges of cross-domain messaging. Like, I need to post data to a domain that isn't the domain where my code is running. Oh, isn't that interesting? It goes through really, like, walks you through examples of how to do all of those things. So it's a great book. It's a couple years old, but honestly still pretty relevant. I also have a bunch of links on my pinboard to various third-party JavaScript articles and resources and stuff. So if this is interesting to you, it sure is fun and a whole new realm of JavaScript development. So my time is up. That's like the fastest talk ever. Thank you very much. I'm Rebecca.